The arena buzzed with anticipation as warriors from across the galaxy gathered to witness the duel. Karthon stood tall, his emerald scales gleaming under the artificial lights. His kind, the Drak'Vaar, were known for their raw physical power, their bodies naturally armored with thick, ridged plating. Strength was their birthright, and to them, humans were nothing more than fragile beings hiding behind their machines. Then came the human. Sergeant David Carter stepped forward, clad in sleek, matte black combat armor. Its design was utilitarian, built for function rather than intimidation, but to Karthon it was laughable. He let out a sharp, guttural chuckle, shaking his head. "You rely on that shell to stand against me?" Karthon's voice carried through the arena, amused and dismissive. "Pathetic." Carter said nothing. He simply tilted his head slightly, his reflective visor giving nothing away. The crowd murmured, some joining Karthon in his laughter, others merely curious. Humans were an oddity, a species that had carved a place in the galaxy despite their physical shortcomings. Their weapons, their technology, their strategic minds, that was what made them dangerous. But in pure, unarmed combat, against a Drak'Vaar, the outcome was inevitable. Karthon took a step forward, flexing his claws. "Let's make this quick, human. I'd hate to waste my energy on something so fragile." A low hum signaled the start of the match. Karthon lunged. Fast. Faster than any unmodified human could hope to be. His claws slashed forward, aiming for the joints of the armor. He expected resistance, expected his opponent to stumble back, to struggle under the sheer force of his attack. But Carter moved. It wasn't a panicked retreat or a desperate dodge. It was smooth, calculated. A slight shift in stance, just enough to let Karthon strike past within inches of contact. The Drak'Vaar's eyes narrowed. Carter still said nothing. Karthon snarled and struck again. This time, he put more force behind it, aiming directly for the chest plate. A solid hit would crumple most personal armor, even reinforced types. He expected impact, expected to hear metal strain under his strength. But Carter wasn't there. The human weaved to the side, the movement impossibly precise. Karthon barely had time to process it before Carter's elbow drove into his ribs, striking with unexpected force. It wasn't enough to harm him, but it sent a clear message. Karthon's nostrils flared. He rolled his shoulders, his tail flicking behind him in irritation. Hiding behind tricks now? That armor's the only thing keeping you alive. Finally, Carter moved just his head, just slightly. Not a nod, not a shake. Something in between. A silent acknowledgement. A promise. Karthon growled and dropped into a stance, muscles coiling. He would put an end to this. No more games. No more dodging. He would tear through the armor and show this human what real power looked like. The duel had just begun. Karthon's breathing was heavier now, his muscles burning from exertion. He had never fought this long against a single opponent. A human, no less. His strikes should have broken Carter by now, should have at least slowed him. Instead, the human still stood, unwavering. No signs of fatigue. No hesitation. Then, Carter did something that sent a ripple through the crowd. He reached up and unlatched his helmet. With a quiet hiss, he removed it, revealing his face for the first time. Karthon expected fear in those eyes. Maybe defiance. What he saw instead made something deep in his gut twist. Cold. Calculated. Not the look of prey. The look of something that had survived worse than him. The arena had fallen silent. The laughter from earlier was gone. And then Carter reached for his chest plate. One by one, he unfastened the armor, letting it drop to the ground with a metallic thud. The plating on his arms followed. His legs. Piece by piece, until nothing remained between him and his opponent but the fabric of his undersuit. Karthon stared. This was a trick. A bluff. It had to be. Why else would a human willingly strip away the only thing keeping him alive? But then he saw the scars. Long, jagged lines ran across Carter's arms, his torso. Some old, some fresh, all telling a story that no words could match. Burns, slashes, punctures. Evidence of wounds that should have ended him. And yet he was still standing. Karthon felt something he had never experienced in a fight before. Not anger, not excitement, unease. Carter rolled his shoulders, testing his movement now that the weight was gone. His body was lean, but every muscle was compact, hardened by years of survival. He hadn't relied on the armor. If anything, it had been holding him back. "You thought that metal made me dangerous," Carter said, his voice calm. "Let me show you what really does." Karthon's claws curled into fists. He forced down the hesitation, forced himself to focus. The armor had to have been providing some kind of enhancement. Strength augmentation, kinetic dampening, something. There was no way a human could match a Drak'Vaar unassisted. He lunged. Carter didn't dodge this time. He stepped in, closed the distance before Karthon could adjust. A sharp strike to the jaw, another to the ribs. A pivot, a shift, and suddenly Karthon was the one struggling to keep up. The blows weren't just strong. They were precise, measured, controlled. Every hit found a weak spot. Every movement had a purpose. Karthon had fought countless battles, but never like this. Never against something that fought with such relentless, terrifying efficiency. He had thought the armor was the threat. Now he understood. The armor wasn't protection. It was restraint. And Carter had just taken it off.